In this case, it's medical equipment sales manager, and each of your candidates gets scored on each of those things, and then the recruitment panel has to decide who the best candidate is here, right? Having a look at this, who do you think on this scale is the best candidate? You've got candidate 1, candidate 2, candidate 3. Each of them score differently against the 4 criteria here. Who do you think is the best candidate for this job? Candidate 1? Okay. Anyone else?
Candidate 2.
1 or 2? 1? Okay. 1? 1's getting a lot of scores here. You like 1 also? Okay. It's interesting. In this group, it's kind of weighted on candidate 1. In other groups, it's pretty much split even. Candidate 1, candidate 2, candidate 3. Okay. I've actually given you an impossible task here.
We don't know what are we looking for.
That's what you're looking for: sales management experience, sales manager management experience, sales manager experience. Sales experience, knowledge, employment decisions based on how much you like people, proven worldwide, is not very successful. Very low correlations with job success. So, sales manager, at least 50% suitability. How do we determine the suitability? What are the qualities that we're looking for in terms of suitability for them? Also, it needs to be quantified in the same way. Only when we do this, we start to have a real scientific means of making those decisions and seeing how do we then determine, how do we look at the whole? Okay, maybe we want to give them also an IQ test or a work sample test or whatever. That also can get entered into the process, and we can give it whatever weighting we want. The objective is to get all of the criteria in front of us so we can this. This is what we think is going to work, but the issue is how well does it work? So when we hire people, we want to be able to look back at that data and say, are we right? Especially those of you who are hiring lots and lots and lots of people. You want to be able to look at your data and say, how well is it predicting? Which parts are predicting? Which parts are not predicting? How effective is it? And how do we put it together in a better way for the next round? Okay? In terms of retaining them and working with them in your company, let them complete the questionnaire. And then we'll come back and tell you exactly the characteristics that make people successful in your company and in your job. Okay? Exactly how the suitability formula can be made to make people successful. And when we go to develop people, we know how to develop them. One of the most interesting things we did recently, we did this for an insurance company in the US, very large insurance company. We did a complete analysis of what makes people successful in their particular job. The results are incredibly interesting. You know, they had a lot of ideas about what made people successful, and some of them were good. But the truth is, we came up with one trait that was the most important trait that they didn't even think of at all that made people successful as an insurance agent. Never dreamed of it. So we did a piece of research and it says, this is the most critical piece of what makes a person succeed in your job. They enjoy teaching. Okay? Because in fact, what they do is a lot of teaching. That's what insurance agents do. Is they're basically educating people on the value of insurance. And then we found a whole series of other traits that relate to success. It's a very powerful process to be able to pull that out. And we talk about people learning on the job. Okay, how good are they at being able to learn in the job? Okay? What are the characteristics that make people learn on the job? Okay? That's a suitability element. So we talk about they have skills, but are they going to learn from you? This is what you need to be able to respond to. Okay? So, you know, managers, you know, usually are trained technically in whatever field they're in. They have very, very small portion of their training is in management itself. And we
coming to that, it's not about the inventory itself, but the kind of insights we derive from the inventory.
Yes.
Now, how is this information going to be used?
Yes.
Employees do have concerns around that.
Yes.
And is it going to be developing in nature? Is it going to be, suddenly there are aspirations. So for example, if your talent meets your aspiration, then you're in the zone.
Yeah.
And you're doing the right kind of job, you excel at it and all that. Many times there are situations where you don't have the talent, but you aspire for it.
Yes.
I think most of the situation in Indian context, is eligibility, because it's very easy, right? I go to engineering college, get 90% grades, all that stuff. But I may not be suitable for the job. Not many are willing to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you want to really go back and tell them that you actually you know what, you are not a good programmer, probably you'll be better off doing something else.
Yeah.
That's a different
challenge. Yes, agreed. In fact, in programming though, there's lots of variations. Okay, you've got technical support people, you've got gamers, right? you've got hardcore programmers. Okay, there's a lot of variation in terms of what people can do. Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to make is there is glamour attached to certain kind of jobs, and in India, it's a cultural issue.
Yeah.
I'll go with the testing example, which you were talking about. Testing is considered as a very low level job.
At least understand the issue that maybe this so-called career path, although you consider it in the future, you can nitty-gritty it out and stick it out, because remember, programming is 70% eligibility anyway. So you've got 70% of it right there, right? You can stick it out and tough it out for a period of time. So for example, if you get a tech guy who's strong in people orientation, there actually is a good path possibly for management even, right? If they can succeed. So in other words, understanding those things and how they're going to navigate their career is very, very important to know. Yeah. Yeah.
Education system does not basically it's supposed to help you discover yourself, right? What your strengths are, what you're good at, all that stuff. But in India, that doesn't happen that way. You don't discover yourself. You do what the entire world thinks is best.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah.
that's the mindset. Science is good. You get 90% in science. Go into engineering college. Get to the best of the engineering college as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Can't get to some engineering college. Get into one of the IT companies. Stay there for 5 years, 6 years, whatever. Then get a H-1B visa. This is all set.
Yes.
Irrespective of what you are good at and what you want to do. That's the problem.
We just had this long discussion with a group of principals this morning. And in fact, the schools are now very much engaged in this. They're very much on to the concept of suitability.
The accounting knowledge. What happens is, the majority of the average and above average candidates, they all end up in BTechs and they do nothing. Right? Majority of the BTech, you go there and there is a disconnect between what he can learn and what he can achieve.
Mm.
Very few people have the aptitude of engineering.
Mm.
Majority of them have different aptitudes. But you have made a policy that you get fee reimbursement, all that stuff, and parents just encourage you to go and join that college. This guy has no clue what engineering is. And what is engineering college is teaching? 90% of them, which I have seen,
yes.
They teach packages.
Yes.
They teach you Java, they teach you Java, all that stuff. They don't really teach you the algorithm, they don't really teach you the basics of programming.
Right.
Nobody knows what is computer programming. What exactly is computer? Nobody knows. Even the professor doesn't know. Who is the professor? The fourth year candidate is the professor for that.
Right.
He is a dropout. So that's where this system is. This assessment is required there.
So we are running a little short of time. So if you have any specific questions, I know from a context side, if you have any specific questions, you may ask Dr. Dan and Atul. They'll be happy to answer. Subjective discussions, maybe you could, we could have over a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Specific technical clarifications. I think I wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth directly. Okay. One is between Harrison assessments and other related assessments like MBTI or Strength Finder or this profiling or whatever. Is there any kind of a overlap or they actually sync each other? Because many companies do tend to use multiple things at multiple levels. So that's one thing I wanted to understand.
Okay. If you're talking about DISC, MBTI, those kind of things, typically used on the development side. And to get teams engaged and talking, and depending upon the skill of the people using it, depends on the outcome.
Right.
They're typically not designed to be recruitment tools.
Sure.
the focus is not what people want, their focus is more personality. And if we're looking at personality, it doesn't give you that capability of engaging people the way I've been talking about engaging people. So that's one of the key differences in itself. The other one is that they don't typically give you a score. So what we do is we give you a score in relationship to a job. It's only when you have a score can you actually go back and verify, is it predicting job success? If I give you a narrative description of the person's personality and I hand it to you and I say now you work out whether the person's going to fit your job or not, it's very, very hard on the recruitment side to do that. Even for a psychologist, very hard for them to do that. So, only when you have a pretty sophisticated formula and you have an actual score that results from it, and you measure a lot of traits. We measure 156 traits as opposed to 10 or 20. Only when you have those things in place, as well as a very good lie detection system in place, only when those things are in place, then you can start to predict. So at the end of the day, if you're talking about for recruitment, the predictive accuracy is really critical. If you don't have predictive accuracy of at least a 0.2 correlation, you're better off to throw it away and just do a structured interview. Okay? Because structured interview, you'll get a 0.2 correlation. So if you're not getting a 0.2 correlation from...
Where do you strike the balance?
You
know that you're grooming it.
Leadership or behavior. I would say a good part of it, if you're going into leadership area, you need different sets of behavior than you would have in a technical job or some other job, because you're interacting with people, so your communication has to get really good. Your ability to hold people accountable has to get good. These are all behavioral issues. Behavioral issues are best addressed by having a person understand themselves. I can talk about them. I can give you general information about behavioral issues, but it doesn't do a lot of good. If we do something that enables you to see your specific behavioral issues, and we identify the one that's the most important one for you to focus on for a period of time, now we're getting somewhere. If I give you a laundry list of they need to be this, 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 and this, and this, and this, you cannot change more than one behavior at a time. I'm sorry, even changing one is a challenge just in itself. But if you take one behavior at a time and you decide which one is the most one for you to focus on, the most important one, now you're actually making some real progress. And especially if you have a coach who works with you and sort of discusses those issues with you, people make fantastic growth, fantastic progress when they do that. But if you just try and take it all as a whole, as a subject, pretty much not a heck of a lot happens.
Many people just try to attempt it. I mean, especially when the pre-screening questionnaire is given to them.
Yes.
So they just try something and then maybe they pass the exam.
Yes.
The pre-screening questions. So is there any way, like in a better way, like we can filter those candidates as well?
Yes. You present the questionnaire. Immediately it's going to engage all your gaming things in there. And you're going to say, how am I going to beat this personality test, right? So, worst thing you can do. If I say to you, and that becomes pretty obvious when
talking of scarcity of resources and how do we get people who can administer this test and
yeah.
Right? So
this is the major training that you have to have. Is to get people who will administer it well in the right.
Somebody who's going to get located on site for a client project needs to fulfill a certain amount of assessment criteria. Part of that entire framework is the behavioral assessment, for which they use Harrison assessments, where we have a template for on-site readiness of the candidate to be placed anywhere else. Today, almost any person in Cognizant who's going to get placed anywhere else in the world, that's about 6,000 people annually, have to undergo the Harrison questionnaire and they camps to arrive at their overall on-site readiness. So if there's senior people undergoing interventions, many more. while Murli was in Deloitte, if we can call Deloitte sort of a, let's say a KPO. Murli, would you like to describe what you did in Deloitte?
It was not an IT services application. This was done for resource managers. So the challenge was the resource managers were primarily working very closely with operations, and they had become, typically Excel sheet pushers, right?
To say how the role has again changed for a much what do you call? It's a requirement which has gone to another level, one notch up basically, and we are saying we'll redefine the job success formula for it. So it's a continuous thing. What we see, 50% recruitment, 50% development, employee as well as organizational development, where a lot of amount of analysis can be done with the kind of data that is report formats that we have, where we have a huge bunch of people and there are 156 traits on it. So if you go right, you continuously have all the 156 traits lined up. The kind of sophisticated and interesting challenges that you are being faced with today, talent problems,